afternoon. My name is Izzy Ashton and I'm the Deputy Editor of Byte at Creative Brief. And today, in the latest instalment of our Creative Brief Explores series, we're talking with an agency and an organisation working to support and protect people's mental health under lockdown. So in a bid to empower people to place boundaries around their online news consumption to actually protect their mental health, Calm teamed up with adam&eveDDB to create the Calm COVID Blocker. This was designed as a free Google Chrome browser extension to help people take a break from the stress and anxiety of the unrelenting coronavirus news cycle. It works by identifying and blocking any images or texts related to COVID-19 on any site that the user visits. So to find out more about this brilliant work, it is my pleasure to introduce Esrael, Alem and Matt Butler, who are the creatives at Adam and Eve behind the campaign, and Ben Hawley, Marketing and Communications Director at Calm. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So I guess kind of to kick things off, Matt, could you maybe kind of tell us how this campaign came about so quickly, sort of with an uplift of calls to the Calm helpline? How did you settle on the idea of the Chrome extension?
Well, when we all went into lockdown, there was a lot of uncertainty, and everyone was looking to the news to kind of find a little bit of reassurance and certainty. But with that comes a lot of mental health strain. You know, you're constantly checking the news, you're constantly talking about, you know, the woes of the world, and that can weigh heavy on you. So, you know, in thinking about Calm and what Calm's purpose is, to really, you know, help with mental health across the UK, we thought it'd be a really good initiative to think about how we can block out some of that negative news to aid people's mental health and to get them to a good place whilst, you know, a lot is happening in the world in this really difficult time.
Yeah. And then I guess, Esrael, can you sort of maybe tell us a little bit about the creative process behind the campaign? Kind of what was the turnaround from idea to execution, and how did it kind of work, designing it all under lockdown?
Yeah, so I think it took about 2 months or so for the from creative to it being launched, and there's really it was quite quick. We were coming up with the idea, and we were talking to designers to like build a framework of how it would work in the same on the same day. Like we were like, it was just initial one paragraph, and then that helped them kind of kick it off. And it was quite easy, actually. It was a bit more collaborative than it would be if you weren't, if you were at home, you were in the office, because you jump on a call really quickly, talk about what was right, talk about what was wrong. They will send you a quick update, and you keep doing that. And by the end of it, you have the COVID blocker.
Do you think that kind of working under lockdown has impacted or shifted kind of the way that you guys work as a creative team?
Yes and no. We have had like a long history of working like remotely with each other, and so it meant that it was actually quite easy. I think it's just more about the amount of time you spend on a computer. It's changed drastically. You know, whereas before we could, you know, when we worked together in IRL, we could just go for a walk and come up with ideas. And now we're just sitting on our computer, researching on our computer, and not really living life. And it has changed that, but it also has brought about like great new ideas and insights, because we start to see the issues that you face when you're on the computer on a day-to-day, and that's really where the COVID blocker came from. So, you know, it's helped us, you know, think about more ideas like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess kind of the important point to remember is that the COVID blocker is kind of not a suggestion to avoid the news altogether, but rather kind of to encourage people to control what they consume. So Ben, I guess kind of why did you feel that the web extension was sort of the right medium to use when it came to communicating the brand's messaging? And sort of as a build on that, how important do you think that this is as a means of sort of encouraging people to kind of place better boundaries around there to protect their kind of health and mental well-being?
Yeah, I guess my answer to that would be twofold. So one, we needed to give people tools. Our helpline was experiencing unprecedented demand. We were doing a lot of content that was helping people, but talking about things is one thing, and then actually providing something that enables that advice is a wholly other thing. So I think the fact that this was essentially a product works really well, because it was something tangible, as opposed to just this ethereal advice that we were giving. And one of our first pieces of advice was to find time to switch off from the news, because we knew that I mean, even in normal times, the news, and I mean, if you think back not that many months ago, and I know it's back on the agenda now, but Brexit seemed pretty all-consuming not that many months ago, and I think a lot of people would have liked to turn the switch off at times during that, when that was sort of front page every day. And so, yeah, the COVID blocker was really smart, because it wasn't the answer. And I think that was really important for us. We weren't there with silver bullets saying this is how people can navigate through this perfectly. We were there with guardrails and suggestions and tools. And this was one of those tools brought to life. It was saying this, this is something that people can use on an hourly, daily basis to restrict the amount of news that they consume, to give themselves that little bit of time out. But I think it also does another thing, which reframes the control over mental well-being. So I think the first thing is people have to acknowledge that things impact it, as in like external factors can damage your mental well-being. And then just even the logic of having a COVID blocker is really useful in demonstrating the sort of action that people can take to take more control, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really interesting idea, isn't it? Because it has kind of come about as a result of a kind of global crisis, but actually is a really essential tool anyway, as you just said, around Brexit, around the fact that we sort of exist online. It's an incredibly useful tool. And I guess kind of over the lockdown period, and there's sort of general feeling of uncertainty has kind of produced almost a collective anxiety so it seems to kind of flow as an undercurrent beneath kind of every conversation and communication and interaction. And there are just so many factors that are impacting people's mental health, kind of not least the detrimental effects of our kind of 24/7 existence online that you've kind of all alluded to. But how important do you think this campaign message is? Perhaps, Matt, you can jump in here. And what role do you think, more broadly, there is for the creative industries to kind of step up and drive meaningful conversations for change?
I think that's a good question. I think ultimately it's kind of down to the individual and down to people to do what they want and use the internet however they see fit. I think, thankfully, like the knowledge that and the insights that Calm provide, it's kind of a bit clearer to see the impacts that the internet and consumption can have on you. Thankfully now, the COVID blocker gives people more autonomy over the things that they see and don't see. And I think that autonomy is really important right now, because, we live in a times where we're constantly bombarded with things. And sometimes it is good to kind of just like switch off and step back. But yeah, I think it's more of like people's role to take a step back, as opposed to it being from the perspective of the industry.
Yeah, I like that point about autonomy, actually, because I guess I think I'm really bad. I have all my notifications turned on my phone, all of them turned on my laptop, and I think it's interesting that you're kind of putting that power sort of back into people's hands. Israel, do you think working on this campaign, has it sort of changed the way that you consume news online? Has it made you more aware of what you're consuming?
Yeah, I think it's made me more aware of what I'm consuming and how it affects me. And I think that's the most important thing, realizing what it does to you and why you end up having like a faster heart rate at the end of the day. It's not because you've walked about, you've had a busy day. It's because you've been on the computer and so much stuff is bombarding you. And I think it's just being aware of yourself and how things affect you. I think this experience of working on the blocker has taught me to be more aware of myself and be mindful of what triggers me, and understand that, and find the tools that help me to calm and alleviate me, and create my own safety bubble.
Yeah, and I guess it's that point that you were saying, Ben, about tools, isn't it? It's you can make as many campaigns as you want, you can sort of talk as much as you want, but if you haven't got the actual physical tools to use, then it sort of falls a bit flat in a way, which I think is sort of one of the powerful things behind this blocker, I think.
Yeah, it's also something that is very tangible to talk about in media. And I think, we generate, when we use the power of creativity effectively, and certainly as an organisation that doesn't invest masses of media budget in anything, we have to rely on earned media through PR. And when you bring a new product to market, it is eminently more PRable and talkable than having an opinion or delivering a message in sort of standard advertising. So that was it was another way of us, I guess, playing a role in the conversation that was really pivotal for us to find our place and define our right to play in COVID. And sort of it was a really good vehicle for doing that.
Yeah, it sort of made sense. You kind of fit in there to support people.
Yeah.
And I think what's amazing is that we've seen some really impactful campaigns from the sort of Calm Adam and Eve partnership over the last few years, perhaps kind of most notably Project 84, which was the campaign that saw 84 statues placed on top of the ITV building to highlight the 84 men that lose their life each week to suicide. And it was a sort of really amazing example of the power of creative collaboration. And sort of, Ben, how do you kind of plan on developing this partnership further? Is there sort of more work in the pipeline that you can talk about, or what sort of next steps, I guess, also when it comes to the COVID blocker?
Yeah, there were, and actually we've got a very incredible relationship with Adam and Eve. They understand our organisation implicitly, and so it's fairly symbiotic. So demonstrated in the COVID blocker their ability to work not necessarily to a brief that's going to take us a month to write and refine and then go through all of the circles their end. I think that there is the ability to be more reactive, which right now is critical. So I think in normal times, and we were developing big ideas for normal times before COVID. Now that COVID is, I don't want to say it's happened, it is happening. It's called into question some of the campaigns that we had planned. So I think we'll continue to be reactive with Adam and Eve and with the sort of creativity that they can turn around and the speed at which we can take something out there and deliver a message. I think that's so vital at the moment, and how organisations are getting the leading edge because everything's changing so quickly. By the time you've thought too hard about something, the moment's passed and people have moved on and the conversation's changed. So I think we need to stay very agile in the way that we work with Adam and Eve right now, and then look to those big sort of pulling back the spring moments and the big Project 84s further down the line, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's really lovely, Esrael, what you were saying about the process being quite an easy one. I think that's potentially not the way that people would always describe, that kind of client agency relationship. Has it been, are you kind of looking to kind of emulate that in client agency relationships that you work with kind of moving forwards?
Yeah, I think that always is the case. You want to be as nimble and as open with each other as possible. You don't want it to be us and them. You want it to be a collective working for a greater cause. And so this is definitely something that we're going to take on to every other project that we're on at the moment. Yeah,
definitely. And kind of a question for all of you: if you had sort of one key takeaway or learning from this campaign that will kind of change the way that you work in the future, what would it be?
It's interesting. I think it's what Ben was saying. It's about products. It's about giving people tools and helping them in that way. So whatever brand it is, I think they should provide some sort of support, as opposed to just giving information and telling you you should go and get that new thing. They should give you something to kind of interact with that you can incorporate into your daily routine. And I think that should be the way we should go in terms of like advertising.
More useful than a message, I guess. Yeah.
I think one of the things that stood out for me and how we change our working practices moving forward is like one thing that, because you can't right now, we're all, but it's worked so effectively. I'd almost say don't overthink it. And COVID has brought in this environment where you kind of have to test and learn and get a product out there or get a campaign out there and very rapidly deploy and develop and test and learn. And I think often to great effect, because you can be that much more on the pulse, you can be that much more forward thinking, and you can in normal times spend a long time convincing yourself it's the wrong thing to do with endless focus groups or things like that maybe stifle some of the immediacy of a great idea or what the core creative concept is, and overcomplicate things and overthink things. So that would be my takeaway.
Just to jump onto what was said a minute ago, I think COVID has made it really clear as to, for people, a lot of people, what they need and don't need. So ultimately, if you're going to put anything out into the world and try to get people to latch onto it, you need to make sure it's going to be benefiting their lives. It's going to be adding purpose and value to them. And it's not just going to be another thing that fades away or, is added to a pile of litter that already exists out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's sort of the point with the extension is to kind of limit what you have to consume. So if you are going to consume something, make it useful and make it really tangible for the user.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and to Ben and Matt and Israel for sharing the story kind of behind this brilliant work and partnership. And if you've been watching, please do share your thoughts using the hashtag DB Explores, and do tune in next week at 2 p.m. on the Creative Brief platform, where we'll have the next in our long line of brilliant partnerships and brand pivots that are proving that creativity really can thrive in the midst of a crisis. Thanks very much.